Black Lives Matter. I just wanted to say that I care about this cause. It's not trendy or popular. It's something that really affects my life. And regardless of what skin color you have, I believe it's something that should affect your lives as well. In the description box below, I will have some information about places you can donate to, places you can get really good educational information on, and different ways that you yourself can be an activist in making change. The number one thing we should take away from all of this is to have respect for people and to care about people. Wear your mask. All right, so let's get into the fun part of today's video. So I've mentioned it a few times on my channel, but I was homeschooled as a kid all the way through high school. And during that time, I was a figure skater. So I feel like I lived a very non-traditional childhood, a very non-traditional adolescence. I've always been a little obsessed with this part of life. And that's probably due to the fact that I didn't get to experience it firsthand. So a lot of my experiences as far as high school go are really through movies. I did go to quite a few school dances. When you're the homeschooled friend and like everybody else goes to public school, people feel sorry for you. And so you get to take advantage of that. While I feel like I missed out on a lot of like major high school events, I feel like I did get kind of a sense of some of them. My thoughts going into being a teenager as a kid and having watched all these movies was a lot different than my actual experience as a teenager. So I've compiled a list of things that I thought were going to be true about being a teenager that ended up not being true. Movies and TV shows don't really accurately depict what it's like to be a teenager. Without too much further ado, let's just get into it. So one of the first things I think of when I think of like high school in movies and TV shows is that there always seems to be a lot of time before school and in between classes to get caught up with your friends on like the latest gossip. Who's having the big party, who broke up with who over the weekend, who was murdered by a serial killer. You know, all of those kind of important conversations that you have with your friends at school, I thought they took place in between classes. And therefore, I thought breaks in between classes were like, I don't know, 15 to 20 minutes long. And you had more than enough time to like, I don't know, run to Starbucks and like grab a coffee. Or like if your school was like really rich, you would just go to like the student lounge and grab a coffee. That's not true, apparently. Apparently you have a couple minutes to get from class to class, and even going to your locker is usually not an option. In fact, most of my friends say that aside from the first and last day of school, they barely even saw their locker throughout the school year, which also makes me question how many people actually have time to sit around and decorate their lockers. How does the decorating of lockers go with any? I don't understand. I've had numerous people explain this to me, but I just don't get it. How do you maneuver? This seems very chaotic and it gives me anxiety thinking about it. Now, I think this is just for kids who are of my age and older, but I thought that we didn't move on from passing notes in class until like the mid to late 2000s. It feels like movies up until that point kind of got stuck on the passing notes thought process, and I hadn't really thought about the fact that like kids have cell phones now, and so they can just text each other as opposed to like passing a note. But I feel like they really kept that going. And so when my friends were in high school, I'd be like, oh, like, do you guys pass notes? Like, I remember asking that, like, do you get asked out from like notes? And they were like, no, we just use MySpace and text. And I was like, oh, it's not as romanticized as I thought it was gonna be. They never address dress codes in modern television shows and movies, and it really bugs me because it feels like a great opportunity to have like, I don't know, a movie or TV show that conquers this and talks about how sexist dress codes are. On top of the fact that dress codes don't exist, in the real world, the dress code is mainly for women. Like, it's mainly just be like, you can't show this because it's a distraction to boys. Yet there's not a single article of clothing that is a distraction for women. Like, an affliction t-shirt, that's a distraction for me. And they just never confront it. All they do is just continuously show people going to school and whatever they feel like, even though in the real world, you can't wear 99% of the stuff that they wear to school. Don't just tell me you're going to show me a real version of what kids are like in a school if you're not gonna actually abide by normal school rules. That is so frustrating to me. I also had this idea in my mind, I think because I grew up watching a lot of like 80s, late 80s and early 90s television shows, is that all kids are required to dissect frogs. And apparently that's not a thing either. I thought it was like a rite of passage. I thought it was like something that you just did in school and it was required of you. But actually in the last few years, you can opt out of it. You're not required to do that. And this doesn't like disappoint me or anything. I just had this understanding that it was part of the high school experience, and it isn't. School dances don't ever look like what they look like in pop culture. Like, no matter what school dance I've been to, none of them are like they are in pop culture at all. Like, I think the best example is to look at 13 Reasons Why. Every school dance this place has is like dressed to the nines. There's like always decorations on the ceiling, on the walls, like everything. And that's not what going to a school dance looks like. I just had this conception that like school dances were basically like a club for teenagers. Now, I will say the proms I went to were of a different caliber, and it seemed as though more thought is put into them. But also, you have to pay for tickets for prom, and the tickets for prom were expensive. Like, I wasn't a student, so I might have ended up paying more, and I just didn't realize it at the time. But it was like $150 just to go to prom. That's just your ticket, just to get in the door. Not to mention, you know, how are you gonna get there? Are you gonna arrive in a limo? Are you gonna be one of those people? Or are you gonna drive yourself? Or are your parents gonna drive you? And then you gotta get the outfit. Me and my friend, we're both seniors, and I went to her senior prom, so it felt like my senior prom. I easily spent at least $300 to $350 just to go to this school dance. That's 5 hours that I paid $300 for. That is crazy. And when you think about it that way, it's like, wow, not everyone can even afford to go to prom, and this is supposed to be a rite of passage. I have a few questions. Also, something that bugs me is the fact that there never seems to be homework, or at least what my friends described as the amount of homework they would have. I never saw that depicted in pop culture. I mean, I get it. Like, who would want to watch a TV show where you were just watching kids study? But it's just like they never take into account homework time. They go out during the week. You know, they have parties every weekend. Like, how do you actually accomplish being a student? I remember one of the biggest struggles that my friends face is that they always seem to have so much homework from every single class, especially if they were taking like AP or specialty classes, and they would barely have enough time to finish all their homework. They were pulling all-nighters all the time to try to get these things done. Another thing that I thought was rampant in high school is that students and teachers just hook up from time to time, and it's no big deal. I don't know why it's so rampant. Just sitting here off the top of my head, I can name you probably at least 5 different shows dealing with this subject as if it's completely normal or, again, a rite of passage. Let's see, in Dawson's Creek, Pacey hooks up with his science teacher or something like that. I can't remember her name right now, but that's a storyline that's played out over, I think, at least 2 seasons, or at least the whole first season. Really, that's what his character is going through, is like falling in love for the first time with his teacher, and then like the outcome of like that getting out, and then people find out what's going on. There are people close to Pacey who know what's going on, and they just choose to look the other way. And I know this example is like,
well, but it's because it's a guy and it's a girl, and so like it doesn't matter.
Like, no, you. Like, she is the person in charge. She is the one with the power, and she's using it for her own pleasure. And it's gross. It's gross. It's not okay. In Riverdale, Archie hooks up with, in the first season, the first scene, all the posters are of this hookup with, don't remember her name. Same kind of storyline. And it gets exposed and people find out about it, and then she just leaves town and nothing ever arises out of it. In Degrassi, we see Paige hook up with Mr. Oleander, and that's like an ongoing story thing. Now, he's not a teacher, he is like a a student teacher, like a teacher, like he's learning how to be a proper teacher. And that's almost even worse. The fact of the matter is, Paige is still a minor and he is still the adult. I've never actually watched this show all the way through, but Pretty Little Liars, Lucy Hale's character also hooks up with a teacher, and I feel like that's an ongoing love affair throughout the entire show. All right, that's 4. That's 4. What else? There's another one. Hold on, it's gonna come to me. Oh, you know, another good example is actually in Juno. Her friend is really into older guys, like her teacher, and then they kind of show it. And of course, like, we don't know for sure that there's any kind of relationship going on. She could just have like an innocent crush on this teacher, but we're supposed to feel a little bit weird about it. Not to mention, Juno's relationship with Jason Bateman is gross. But I will tell you, I thoroughly enjoyed Juno as a kid, and I still enjoy it now as an adult. However, this relationship that they depict in the movie does make me extremely uncomfortable. And it's frustrating that they keep showing this type of relationship in these type of shows, because as a kid, I didn't see anything wrong with it. I don't think pop culture has an influence necessarily on your actions, just like as a PSA, I don't believe in that. But I do feel like it can change your perspective or normalize something that is not normal. Throwing it out there. All right, next topic. You have to understand, I was a teenager from 2003 to 2009, okay? And during those very formative years, there was a show called My Super Sweet 16 that was extremely popular. And I thought all kids had Sweet 16s, where you would like rent a dance hall and you would invite every single person you've ever known in your entire life, and you would dance the night away, and then you'd get, you know, a car at the end of it or something like that. That didn't happen. My Sweet 16 looked like my mom getting very mad and grounding me for a while for making too big of a deal about my Sweet 16. Cut to forming a last minute Sweet 16 3 months after my birthday. Out of the 30 people invited, 7 of them showed up. So like, clearly that wasn't exactly what I thought would happen. I had these ideas of grandeur and they just never like went anywhere. To be completely honest, I don't think any of my friends actually had a Sweet 16. Don't put down all of your preconceived notions about turning 16. There's nothing exciting that really happens, except if you live in America, you can get your license. And even then, like, I didn't get a car until I was 18, so like, what did it matter anyway? Something else I thought I would get to have more experience in is babysitting. I feel like everything I've ever watched tells me that every teenage girl is asked to babysit at some point in time, and even some of them go on to create like a babysitting business, one might say. I never babysat as a teenager. I never babysat at all. And one day when I have children, I am completely unprepared for that as a whole. So something to look forward to. Now, of course, I feel like the biggest misconception about being a teenager is this idea that there are parties that you are invited to every single weekend of the high school year. And the reality of that is like, there aren't parties every single weekend. People have lives. These are children, and you can't always get access to a house with no parents. 2, a lot of these parties do have parents present. Sometimes there is drinking, and some parents allow it. That's a thing. And thirdly, for the most part, any parties I actually went to in high school, I don't think you would call them a party. We would refer to them as a kickback. And the difference between a party and a kickback is that parties typically have a lot of people, probably more people in one area than should be allowed. Whereas a kickback is usually you and like your closest friends or like your cousins or something, and like you're all hanging out, drinking like 1 bottle of Smirnoff and trying not to get caught. Now, I don't condone teen drinking. I don't condone the use of drugs or anything in that scenario, but to say that that wasn't present when I was a teen would be a lie. This situation, drugs and parties and all that stuff, That is true to some degree, but these like Project X style parties that you're constantly seeing, or like Euphoria, like I've never been to a party like that. I don't know anyone that really went to parties like that, and I don't think it's as prevalent as pop culture would make you think it is. The only show that like I kind of give a pass for, like as far as like partying ways, is Gossip Girl. I feel like there's a rhyme and reason as to how all these teenagers are A, getting a hold of alcohol, B, getting into like clubs and bars and things like that, is because they're rich. It does make a little bit more sense. Even parts of Euphoria, I'm like, oh, a lot of these kids are supposed to be rich kids, so they would have the upper hand in the situation, and they would be able to get out of situations in case they were caught. And because they have money, they are more likely to get access to things that kids shouldn't have access to. So I think in those regards, it kind of makes sense. But I feel like pop culture depicts teenagers as like problems. I guess that's kind of subjective. Tell me in the comments below, like, are parties as prevalent as they seem to be on television? And are parties nearly as rowdy as like they depict them to be? Or is that more 1 in 5 parties that are really like that? But here's my last one. I had this idea in my head that there was a secret fund somewhere for me for when I graduated high school, that I would be able to go backpacking through Europe. This was such a big topic in the late 80s and early 90s. Very, very common storyline played out. The one that comes to mind first is Gilmore Girls. Actually, Rory and Lorelai both go backpacking through Europe after Rory graduates from high school. And I remember this being so heavily ingrained in my thoughts around high school. They were gonna send me away and I was gonna go explore the world and find myself before I went off to college. Guess what? None of that happened. Guess what? I've never been out of the United States. Guess what? It's all bullshit. In fact, I don't know a single person that backpacked through Europe or went to Europe before they started college. And I've never been more disappointed in my life. I just really thought that that was like, it was going to happen. I thought it was a requirement of letting high school go, was to go off to Europe, find a cute boy, fall in love, and then come back and start the rest of your life. Well, okay, so this was kind of a short video and something a little bit different. I talked about more things I found in general from movies and TV shows, and less about like one specific topic like I normally do. But if you like videos like this, let me know in the comments below. Please do me a solid and drop a like on this video, then run over to that subscribe button and hit the bell next to it so you can be notified every time I upload. But until next time, I appreciate you checking out my video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. I don't know if I should do that. I feel like everybody like covers the thing, or I feel like that's a very old way to sign out of YouTube videos. And we're in a new era of YouTube, clearly. So I don't know. Whatever. Let's just see you next time.